Video game reviews, Metacritic, it's one of our greatest and worst tools ever, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I can't deny I use this tool pretty often to gauge my buying interest for video games, but over the last several years, I've begun to wonder why I even bother sometimes. Now, the thing about Metacritic, for those of you, who don't know the site, it's a website that aggregates review scores from all big critic publications and a lot of user publications or user reviews. It's kind of like a rough idea, sort of the Rotten Tomatoes for video games, or the Rotten Tomatoes for almost anything. It aggregates, I believe, movies, TV shows, and everything, but I primarily use it for video games. Now, the thing about this is, usually a score on Metacritic will kind of correlate to how well or good a game usually is. If a game scores really high, that's because, hey, it's been getting praise from a lot of places. And when the user score is also great as well, you know that there's a good product. It's special when you have a score that's either really good and one that's really bad, because then you realize there's a disconnect between the reviewers and the general audience buying the game. Now, for me, I'm more focused on sort of mainstream video game reviews. Now, over the last week, I think 2 weeks now, Days Gone has released for PlayStation 4, and I'll give you my perception of it. The game is not as great as most of the other Sony single-player IPs that are out there, but it does actually offer a fair bit of fun to it. It doesn't really do anything so new in terms of gameplay. A lot of people talk about this big horde mechanic in the game, and honestly, I've seen it in Dead Rising as well. It is a little more interesting in this, but I'm not so blown away. It's not the most innovative game out there. And in many ways, it sort of resembles a Ubisoft open world game with a lot of checklisting to do. Now, does it come in a really nice, slick package? Absolutely. But is it some genre-defining, groundbreaking game? Absolutely not. Now, what I kind of have an issue with is not so much the review scores that it's getting, because honestly, a 70-something out of 100 on Metacritic is a pretty appropriate score for Days Gone. It's nothing super special, but it's decent enough to get its score. And, 7 out of 10 is nothing to scoff at. It's a very decent score. What I have an issue with is how a lot of the mainstream reviewing media reviews, not just this game, but anything else, because it's not just Days Gone. I've had this issue with, AC Odyssey. I've had this issue with a lot of open world games, a lot of RPGs to be specific. When I look at reviewers like IGN or GameSpot, I get the store often confused with the reviewing publication. The GameSpot, Kotaku, IGN, whatever you want to call it, the big mainstream review side of the industry. I realize that you're looking at guys and girls who really don't fucking want to be playing the games that they're playing, or they don't or their expectations are all over the place. I commonly hear this thing that a game is too grindy or a game takes 50 hours to complete. And what weirds me out is I look at the genre, 50 hours to complete. What are we talking about? An RPG. Historically, back in the day when an RPG was 50 hours completion, we looked at that and said, that's pretty average. It could be fucking higher. We looked at an RPG, and nowadays the game length hasn't so much changed. The production quality of the games has certainly changed for, in my opinion, the better. It's definitely more grandiose. It is a better experience, but 50 hours is par for the course. I'm looking at reviewers now that want these games to have Call of Duty length campaigns. Look, when you buy an RPG that's supposed to take 50 hours to complete, it's a different genre. Call of Duty, Halo, a lot of that stuff, it's a shooter. Of course it takes 4 or 5 hours to complete the goddamn campaign. If every campaign was as long as Kane and Lynch 2, guess what? I really wouldn't be playing video games anymore, because, hey, the price to how much I get has completely diminished. We've reached a point where it's like the game reviewers at this moment in time, at least the mainstream side, don't understand what kind of games that they're playing. The argument of too grindy that gets tossed around, don't get me wrong, that definitely is true in the case of a lot of games. Specifically, the WB ones filled with microtransactions, or really any EA game that you want to toss in that has loot boxes in a single player game. But when you look at an RPG that requires you to level your character up and get skills and equipment, we've always played a video game like that. We've always had that shit. We've had that shit, even before last generation. We've had that shit on the PlayStation 1. Hell, I don't know many examples on the Super Nintendo. You know, fuck it. Maybe if we drop in all the JRPGs from the Super Nintendo era, you know what? We've always had the concept of leveling our characters, grinding a little bit. We've always done it. The concept of it being something so new and destructive is really out of the place for me. Like, I don't understand the argument. It's like, did we just make shit up for the sake of making it up? Because anybody that has played a fucking video game at all realizes what it does. We've gotten to a point where genres that are known for fucking being grindy have been criticized for being grindy. Like, you literally bought into it. Like, you're gonna buy Diablo 3, all right, and expect it to fucking have no grind? Are you out of your mind? Of course the game is gonna have it. That is what are you gonna buy Borderlands 3 and not expect to grind for some weapons? Are you really gonna do that? No, because you understand what you're getting into. So we're already arguing about the game length for it. You have reviewers who aren't even really finishing the game anymore. You know, they play 6 to 7 hours of a game, and then they write the review on it. So the review is also 5 minutes long as a video. The article is 5 minutes to read. So you're watching or reading this review that is a 5-minute review or whatever, right? And they're supposed to cover all the concept of a 50-hour game in a 5-minute review. Are you fucking kidding with me? You know, there are a lot of YouTube reviewers like ACG. I'll throw Angry Joe into that mix for sure. Rant on, check out his channel. The guy definitely has a funny way to cover video games. Jim Sterling, even though I made that video a while ago, where I couldn't really trust the guy on certain things, and you know, I still hold true to that, but I will say something about Jim Sterling. The guy will finish the games that he plays. He will give the games fair due. You have these reviewers who are willing to spend their time to play the game. Then you have IGN, GameSpot, who like sit down, play the game. I wouldn't even say for 6 to 7 hours, maybe like 3 or 4, enough to get past the tutorial for the game. Pretty much. Write the goddamn review as if they've played the entire game and then sell that off. And that's where I have it written down. You know, you can't just rush through these things. You're playing the game on easy. You're never looking at the side objectives. You're not. You maybe touch them once through your entire 6-hour playthrough or first impression and test it. I would be more happy if a lot of these mainstream publications, and I've always really said this is the way that you should review games nowadays, is make your first impressions review. I understand it's a cutthroat industry. You got to get your video out day one, before day one. So yes, post your review, post your first impressions, tell people, yes, I've played the game for like 15 hours only, and that this is my first impression of it. It's the honeymoon period for a game, because they're games that get really great reviews because they start off really strong. They fucking end really shitty, and that never gets mentioned. And then make another big review like a week or two after it, once you've given the game its due time. You know, games are different beings. You know, you got sports games, you got racing games, you've got games like Metal Gear that'll take you a couple hours to finish, right? If you're just speeding through that motherfucker. Then you got games like Final Fantasy X that are a goddamn ordeal, which I've just finished. A good ordeal, but an ordeal nonetheless. You've got games in all different kind of categories. You know, I'm getting old. I understand. You know, I don't have 50 hours to dedicate to each game. I kind of treat it as a nightly hobby at this moment in time. I sit down, fucking lay in bed, you know, before I gotta go to sleep, play a game, get past a story beat, end it, go to sleep. It's actually fixed up my sleep schedule quite a bit. And then I do the whole thing, you know, and the world works. But with most game reviewing, I've realized, you know, number one, we've got people who aren't putting their due hours into even playing the game to begin with. These people are skipping key segments of a game. And the other big thing I have, and this specifically goes to IGN, is almost every landmark review they do, there's always an injection of user politics or the reviewer politics. And that always knocks the score down. And I never understand why that works. You know, a game's politics is that. A game's politics. You know, it's whatever. And for the one reviewer to knock a score down by like 1 or 1.5, 2 at times, it's like, oh, well, the game is fucking great, but I can't agree with the main character's political beliefs or what the game's trying to say. Well, nobody asked you for that information. Nobody gave a fuck. Your job was there to review the game, not spend 1 minute of the 5-minute review, the 20% of its runtime, telling us about what you believe and what you don't believe. It's superfluous shit like that makes the reviews even harder to bear through. And when you look at the likes and dislikes to these, you can see that I'm not the only one thinking that situation. Almost every single person who watches many of these reviews get it. They understand why. You know, and it's not even a fanboy thing. You can go to like PlayStation games, Xbox games, PC games, Nintendo games, whatever you want to call it, and it comes out to the same way. The reviewer doesn't give it due respect. So you have a lot of games that get these really tanked up reviews, and they end up being really awesome games. And yes, are there some problems with it? Sure. But if you spent longer than 2 hours playing the game, you would realize things start to work themselves out, and then you should reassess your review at that moment in time. You've got people who are reviewing genres they have no interest in reviewing. You're giving people who give a fuck about every year's Madden entry, Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Aegis to play. Okay, what a fucking stark difference in the kind of games that they're interested, right? I've always been one of those people, it's like, if you're interested in reviewing a game, if that's the genre you're most experienced with, then you should get the review. Let's not give the racing sim fan fucking Last of Us Part 2 to play. Maybe it'd be better spent giving that person Forza Horizon or Forza Motorsport or a Gran Turismo game to review. Just, you look at that line of thinking and you wonder, holy shit, I could run a goddamn gaming publication better than these guys too. And then you realize, you watch the videos, you understand what the fuck the community reaction to all of it is, and you're like, you know, I'm actually pretty goddamn right about it. And yes, is there an element of being edgy and controversial on these reviews for the sake of doing it because it generates clicks and revenue? Abso-fucking-lutely. So yeah, you know, game reviewing has become this almost tainted art for me. I just can't fuck with it at this moment in time. Actually, I can. You know, with a lot of YouTube reviewers, I've realized over the years there's been so many good YouTube channels that have come out that are covering the games, and it's always fun to have a network of YouTube channels that have their own little niches, you know, their own little favorite review genre. You know, there's some people love tactical shooters. Go to them for a tactical shooter review. Some people love fucking RPGs. Go to their website for RPG reviews. But please, ladies and gentlemen, you gotta stay away from that fucking IGN, Kotaku stuff. And it's not to shit talk them, dude. At the end of the day, both these sites still have some good people left working for them. But the thing is like, as I said way before, 10% of this reviewing staff is, in my opinion, worth listening to, because everything else honestly feels like it's not been given enough due diligence when it comes to a video game review. Like, you can't review a 50, 60 hour game the same way you review like a 2-hour movie. It just doesn't work like that. And if you're not interested in playing the game, don't fucking play it. But don't act like you fucking played it for the audience watching. Ladies and gentlemen, I know I covered a lot of points, but I kind of had a lot to talk about with this specific story in general. But ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like if you dislike it, I am out.